Dozens of civilizations, every continent on Earth, thousands of years apart, no shared language, no shared religion, no documented contact with each other, and every single one of them built pyramids. That is not a theory, that is the archaeological record. For centuries, the assumption was that this was coincidence, that the pyramid shape is stable, practical, and any ambitious ancient culture would eventually land on it. That explanation held for a long time. Then researchers started looking more carefully, not just at the shape, but at the dimensions, the orientation, the materials used, the substances found inside, the dates of construction, the mathematics built into the stone. What they found does not have a clean explanation. This video goes through the verified, documented, peer-reviewed evidence. No fabrications, no invented connections, no ancient astronaut arguments. Just the confirmed facts about what these structures contain, when they were built, and what the patterns across all of them actually show. The evidence is strange enough on its own. Section 1. The Global Inventory. More pyramids than most people know exist. Most people, if asked to picture a pyramid, see Egypt, the desert, the three famous shapes rising above the sand outside Cairo. That image is not wrong, it is just massively incomplete. Pyramids were built on nearly every continent on Earth. They were built by dozens of separate civilizations across a span of more than 5,000 years. Many of them were built by people who had no contact with each other, no shared language, no shared religion, and no way of knowing the other existed. And yet they all built pyramids. That is the first fact that needs to sit with you before anything else is discussed. The oldest known pyramid structures are not in Egypt. They are in the Middle East. The Sumerians of ancient Mesopotamia, in what is now southern Iraq, were building stepped pyramidal structures called ziggurats as far back as 4000 BC. The original ziggurat at the city of Eridu, known as the Anu ziggurat, dates to around that time. These were built from sun-dried mud brick, built in receding tiers, stacked on top of each other, and topped with a shrine. The Sumerians were not alone in this tradition. The Babylonians, Akkadians, Elamites, and the Syrians all built ziggurats. Hundreds of years before the Egyptians laid a single stone at Giza, pyramid building was already an established practice in the ancient world. Egypt's pyramid age began around 2700 BC, when Pharaoh Djoser commissioned a structure at Saqqara. His architect, a man named Imhotep, designed a step pyramid built from dressed stone. 6 layers of carved limestone stacked on top of each other, rising roughly 200 feet high. It was the first large-scale stone monument in human history. From that point, Egyptian pharaohs built pyramids continuously until around 1700 BC. By the time it was over, at least 118 pyramids had been identified across Egypt, most of them concentrated near Cairo. But Egypt does not hold the record for the most pyramids. Sudan does. The ancient Kushite kingdoms of Nubia, in what is now central Sudan, built approximately 240 pyramids across 4 royal burial sites. These Nubian pyramids are steeper than Egyptian ones, built from reddish sandstone, and construction continued at these sites until around 200 AD. That means pyramid building in the Nile region did not stop for roughly 4,000 years. Across the Atlantic Ocean, with no documented contact with Africa or the Middle East, the civilizations of the Americas were doing the same thing. In Peru, the city of Caral was under construction around 2600 BC. Caral served as the capital of the Norte Chico civilization and contained multiple pyramid structures, the largest of which stood about 60 feet tall and was built from cut stone. The dates matter here. Egypt's first pyramid was built around 2630 BC. Peru's Caral pyramids were being constructed at almost exactly the same time. These two civilizations were separated by an ocean, Neither left any record of knowing the other existed. Moving north into Mexico, the scale of pyramid construction becomes staggering. The Great Pyramid of Cholula in the Mexican state of Puebla is the largest pyramid on Earth by volume. It covers nearly 45 acres and rises 177 feet. It was built in stages by pre-Columbian peoples and was later used by the Aztecs as a temple. After Spanish conquest in the 16th century, a Catholic church was built on top of it. The pyramid is so large that for centuries it appeared to be a natural hill. Most people walking past it today still do not know what is underneath. The city of Teotihuacan, located about 30 miles northeast of modern Mexico City, was built around 100 BC and at its peak housed somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 people. It contained multiple pyramids, including the Pyramid of the Sun, whose square base measures approximately 730 feet on each side. The Maya built their own pyramids across what is now Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras. The Aztecs built the Templo Mayor in their capital of Tenochtitlan, a double staircase pyramid dedicated to two gods simultaneously. In North America, the Mississippian people built enormous earthen pyramid mounds. The largest, Monk's Mound at the site of Cahokia in what is now Illinois, was completed around 1100 AD. Its base is larger than the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was built entirely from soil and clay carried in baskets. It stands 100 feet high and served as the center of a city that was, at its peak, one of the largest urban centers in North America. Africa produced pyramids beyond Egypt and Sudan. Nigeria has 10 known Insude pyramids. The ancient kingdom of the Garamantes in what is now Libya left pyramid-shaped tomb structures. In Europe, the island of Sardinia contains Monte de' Cadi, a step pyramid structure built around 4000 BC by the Ozieri culture, a prehistoric people who constructed more than 200 related archaeological sites. In Rome, the Pyramid of Cestius was built between 18 and 12 BC by a Roman magistrate, modeled deliberately on Egyptian design. In Southeast Asia, the 15th century Javanese Hindu temple of Candi Suku sits on the slope of a volcano in Indonesia and takes the form of a step pyramid. Cambodia's ancient temple complexes incorporate pyramidal structures built to honor Hindu gods. In China, the burial mounds of emperors from the Qin dynasty onward were built as massive stepped earthen pyramids. The burial complex of the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, constructed between 246 and 208 BC, sits beneath a mound that still has not been fully excavated. That is the inventory. Pyramids in Africa, the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and across the entire length of the Americas, built by dozens of separate civilizations, built across 5,000 years, built by people who in most cases had no knowledge of each other at all. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The question of why so many unconnected people built the same shape is one thing. But there is a second question, one that cuts deeper and has no clean answer. Because it turns out it is not just the shape these civilizations shared, it is where they chose to build them, and what they chose to put inside them, and what they encoded into the dimensions of the walls and the angles of the stone. And when you start looking at those numbers, the coincidences begin to feel like something else entirely. Section 2. The Geographic Riddle, where the Great Pyramid sits on Earth. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It is the only one still standing. It was built approximately 4,500 years ago, and for nearly 4,000 of those years, it was the tallest structure on the planet. Those facts alone are remarkable enough. But the location of this structure and what has been measured about its placement on Earth is where things start to get genuinely difficult to dismiss. Start with orientation. The Great Pyramid faces true north, not approximately north, not mostly north, true north, with an accuracy of better than 4 minutes of arc, which works out to 1/15 of 1 degree of error. That level of precision, achieved without GPS, without satellites, without any modern surveying technology, has baffled engineers and archaeologists for generations. To put it in practical terms, modern builders using modern equipment struggle to consistently match that level of alignment. The ancient Egyptians did it across a structure covering 13 acres of ground. It gets more specific. Archaeologist and engineer Glenn Dash published research in 2017 in the Journal of Ancient Egyptian Architecture, confirming that not just one, but 3 of the largest Egyptian pyramids, 2 at Giza and 1 at Dashur, share the same directional error. All 3 are rotated very slightly counterclockwise from the cardinal points. The same error, the same direction, across 3 separate structures. This means the alignment was not accidental, and neither was the slight deviation. It was consistent, repeated, and deliberate. The Egyptians left no engineering documents explaining how they did this. No blueprints, no technical records, nothing that shows how a civilization working with copper tools and human labor achieved the most precisely aligned large structure in the history of construction. Now move to the question of where on Earth this structure was placed. If you draw a line from east to west that crosses the maximum amount of land on the planet's surface, and then draw a second line from north to south that crosses the maximum amount of land, those 2 lines intersect at 2 points on Earth. One of those points is in the ocean, the other is at the Great Pyramid of Giza. This calculation was first documented by researcher Joseph Seiss in 1877 and has since been repeated by multiple independent analysts. It is worth noting that the precise result depends on the exact methodology used to calculate land coverage, and not all geographers accept the framing. But the geographic position of the pyramid relative to the distribution of Earth's landmass is a documented numerical fact, not an invention. The coordinates of the Great Pyramid are 29.9792 degrees north latitude. The speed of light in a vacuum is 299,792 kilometers per second. This numerical correspondence has been noted and circulated widely. It has not been verified as intentional by any academic institution, and it may be coincidence. What it is not, however, is fabricated. The coordinate is real. The constant is real. The match is real. Now look at the physical structure itself. The 4 outer faces of the Great Pyramid are not flat. This is not visible from ground level, and for most of recorded history, nobody knew about it. It was only identified through aerial photography in the 20th century. Each of the 4 faces has a very slight concave curve built into it, meaning they bow inward very slightly toward the center. The radius of that curvature matches the radius of the Earth. Somebody, building a pyramid 4,500 years ago, carved a curve into each face of a structure covering 13 acres of ground that corresponds precisely to the curvature of the planet. The original outer surface of the pyramid made this even more extraordinary. The structure was once covered with approximately 144,000 casing stones made of highly polished white limestone. Each stone was finished to an accuracy of 1/100th of an inch, across surfaces that weighed around 15 tons each. The finished pyramid would have been blinding in direct sunlight, a smooth, reflective white shell visible from enormous distances. An earthquake in the 14th century loosened many of these casing stones, and they were subsequently used as building material for mosques and other structures in Cairo. What is left today is the rough inner core that was never meant to be seen. The interior of the structure contains its own unexplained properties. The temperature inside the pyramid remains constant at approximately 20 degrees Celsius, regardless of the temperature outside. That is not simply a function of being underground or enclosed. The design of the structure maintains a stable internal temperature year-round. 20 degrees Celsius is also, separately, the average temperature of the Earth's surface. Whether that correspondence is designed or coincidental has not been established. The pyramid sits with its base covering a precise 13 acres of ground. Its original height was 146.5 meters. The mortar binding its stones has been chemically analysed and cannot be reproduced with modern methods. It is stronger than the stone it binds. The formula has not been identified. The stones themselves were quarried from sites including Tura across the Nile and Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south. Recent archaeological work found evidence of a harbour functioning on the Giza Plateau during construction, suggesting the Nile was used as the primary transport system. The logistics alone, millions of multi-ton stones moved with precision over 20 years, represent an organisational achievement that modern analysts still argue about. The geographic placement of the pyramid, combined with the precision of its alignment, the curvature built into its faces, and the properties of its interior, adds up to a structure that knew things about the planet it was built on. How much of that knowledge was deliberate and how much is coincidental is a question that has not been answered. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But location and orientation are only the beginning of what this structure contains. Because built into the actual measurements of the pyramid, the height, the base, the angles, are numerical relationships that point to something even harder to account for. Section 3. The mathematics encoded in stone. Numbers do not lie. That is the starting point for this section. Not theories, not speculation, not ancient astronaut arguments. Just the measured dimensions of a structure built 4,500 years ago, and what those dimensions contain when you do the math. The Great Pyramid of Giza has a base length of 230.4 meters and an original height of 146.5 meters. Those are the numbers archaeologists have measured and agreed on. Everything that follows comes directly from those two figures. Take the perimeter of the base. Add up all four sides. You get approximately 921.6 meters. Now take the height, 146.5 meters, and treat it as the radius of a circle. Calculate the circumference of that circle. The result is approximately 920.5 meters. The perimeter of the base of the pyramid and the circumference of a circle whose radius equals the pyramid's height are almost identical. The margin of difference is less than 1/10 of 1%. This is a geometric encoding of pi, the mathematical constant describing the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter, built into the physical dimensions of a stone structure thousands of years before pi was formally identified and named by Greek mathematicians. Now look at the same structure through a different lens. Divide the height of the pyramid by half the base length. That calculation gives you 0.636. A pyramid built using the golden ratio, the mathematical proportion represented by the number phi, approximately 1.618, produces a height-to-base ratio of exactly 0.636. The Great Pyramid matches this to 3 significant decimal places. Phi is the ratio that appears throughout nature in the spiral of shells, the branching of trees, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. It was not formally defined as a mathematical concept until ancient Greece, centuries after the pyramid was built. And yet, the pyramid's proportions reflect it with a precision that goes beyond rough approximation. Here is what makes this particularly difficult to explain away as coincidence. A paper published through Academic Review demonstrated that among all possible pyramid shapes, triangular base, pentagonal base, hexagonal base, any configuration, only the square pyramid produces these simultaneous relationships between pi and phi in its geometry. The specific shape chosen for the Great Pyramid is the only shape where both constants appear together at this level of precision. If the builders were using practical construction ratios and happened to stumble into approximate values of pi and phi, they happen to do so in the one geometric form where both appear simultaneously. That is the documented mathematical reality. The Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza in Mexico, built by the Maya around 1000 AD, encodes a completely different mathematical constant, but encodes it just as precisely. The pyramid has 4 staircases. Each staircase has 91 steps. 4 staircases multiplied by 91 steps gives 364. Add the top platform, which counts as the final step, and the total is 365. The exact number of days in a solar year, built into the step count of a pyramid. This is not an approximation. It is not close to 365. It is 365 precisely by design. The same pyramid at Chichen Itza sits at an orientation of approximately 17 degrees east of magnetic north. In that location, the magnetic declination is approximately 2 degrees east. The actual orientation relative to true north is therefore around 19 degrees. This is not a cardinal alignment in the way the Great Pyramid faces true north. It is an intentional angular offset. That offset aligns the pyramid directly with both the winter solstice sunrise and the summer solstice sunset, the 2 most extreme solar positions of the year. The mathematics of Earth's axial tilt, approximately 23.5 degrees, are embedded in the placement of a pyramid on the other side of the world from Egypt by a civilization that had no contact with the Egyptians. Back in Egypt, the numbers keep producing results that have no clean explanation. The 4 walls of the Great Pyramid, measured as straight lines along their base, produce a total of 36,524 inches. Move the decimal point, and you get 365.24, the precise length of the solar year as measured by modern science, including the fractional day that necessitates a leap year every 4 years. The ancient Egyptians appear to have known the exact length of the solar year to 4 significant figures and embedded it in the inch measurement of a pyramid's perimeter at a scale of 100 to 1. The slope angle of the Great Pyramid's faces is approximately 51.83 degrees. This specific angle is the face slope of a pyramid built using the golden ratio. It is not an angle that appears by accident in rough construction work. It requires precise geometric planning to achieve and maintain across 4 faces, each covering more than 5 acres of surface area. Researchers publishing through Academic Mathematics have confirmed that the algebraic relationships between pi and phi that appear in the Great Pyramid's geometry are not simply approximate coincidences that emerge from any large stone structure. They are specific to the square pyramid form, and they appear in the Giza structure with a level of precision that requires either intentional design or a coincidence of a kind that has no parallel in architectural history. Both pi and phi appear in the same structure, with errors smaller than those produced by modern construction tolerances. The Egyptians left no written record explaining these relationships. No papyrus describing the geometric planning of the structure has been found. The numbers are there in the stone. The explanation for how they got there is not. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. What makes all of this more unsettling is that the mathematics embedded in the pyramids does not stop at numbers, it extends to the sky. Because these structures were not just built with extraordinary geometric knowledge, they were pointed at specific stars, oriented to specific moments in the solar calendar, and aligned to celestial events with a precision that raises questions about exactly how much ancient civilizations understood about the movement of the heavens above them. Section 4. Astronomical Architecture. When pyramids become calendars. The sun moves in a predictable pattern. Every year it rises and sets at slightly different points on the horizon, reaching its northernmost position on the summer solstice in June and its southernmost position on the winter solstice in December. Twice a year, at the spring and autumn equinoxes, day and night are equal length everywhere on Earth. Ancient people watched this cycle closely. They tracked it, recorded it, and in many cases built it permanently into stone. What is remarkable is not that one civilization did this. It is that civilizations on opposite sides of the planet, with no documented contact with each other, did it to the same degree of precision, and in many cases used the same astronomical events as their reference points. Start at Giza. The Great Pyramid's 4 sides align to the cardinal directions: north, south, east, west, with the accuracy already described in the previous section. But the broader Giza complex contains additional astronomical alignments that operate independently of that cardinal orientation. At sunset on the winter solstice, if you stand directly in front of the Great Sphinx and face it, the sun descends and comes to rest precisely on the right shoulder of the Sphinx. At that same moment, the sun is positioned behind the Sphinx at the southern corner of the Pyramid of Khafra. This is not an approximate visual effect. It is a precise geometric relationship between 3 separate structures: the Sphinx, the Pyramid of Khafra, and the position of the winter solstice sun, that requires deliberate placement of all 3 elements relative to each other. On both the spring and autumn equinoxes, the same alignment produces a different effect. The setting sun drops directly onto the Sphinx's right shoulder, and simultaneously sits behind the Sphinx at the corner of Khafra's pyramid. The complex was laid out to capture 2 separate astronomical events, the solstice and the equinox, using the same set of structures from the same vantage point. Inside the Great Pyramid itself, 2 narrow shafts extend from the king's chamber through the body of the pyramid. In the 1960s, researchers Virginia Trimble and Alexander Badawi identified that one of these shafts was oriented to point toward the position of the North Star as it would have appeared when the pyramid was constructed, a star called Alpha Draconis. The other shaft pointed toward the star Al-Natak in the constellation Orion, which the Egyptians associated with their god Osiris, at the time period around 2450 BC. These are not air shafts in any practical sense. The dead do not need ventilation. They are directional channels, pointed at specific stars with enough precision that the target stars can be identified across a gap of 4,500 years. Now travel to Mexico. The Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza produces one of the most visually documented astronomical effects of any structure on Earth. On the spring equinox each year, in the hours approaching sunset, the angle of the sun against the northwest corner of the pyramid casts a series of triangular shadows onto the northern staircase. These shadows form the body of a serpent. At the base of that staircase sits a carved stone serpent head. As the sun moves toward the horizon, the shadow body descends the staircase toward that head, creating the visual effect of a feathered serpent coming down from the temple. The Maya called this day the return of the sun serpent. The effect repeats on the autumn equinox. It works because the pyramid was built with that specific shadow geometry calculated into the angle and positioning of the northwest corner. A structure built around 1000 AD produces a precise astronomical light show twice a year, on the 2 days of the year when day and night are equal, using nothing but the geometry of its own construction and the predictable movement of the sun. Move further into the Teotihuacan complex, also in Mexico, built by a civilization that predates the Aztecs and whose real name is still unknown. Research coordinated by Ismael Arturo Montero Garcia and published through Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History confirmed that the vertices of the Pyramid of the Moon at Teotihuacan align to the northeast with the summer solstice sunrise and to the southwest with the winter solstice sunset. The team found that on the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the Chihuingo volcano as seen from the pyramid, a volcano that the Teotihuacanos appear to have used as an astronomical observatory to calibrate their calendar. The pyramid itself, the volcano, and the sun's position on the longest day of the year were all incorporated into a single unified system. Separately, the pyramid of the sun at the same complex aligns not with solar events, but with lunar standstills, the extreme positions of the moon's rising and setting over its 18.6-year cycle. The two largest pyramids at Teotihuacan were oriented to track different celestial bodies. One tracks the sun, one tracks the moon. Both were integrated into the same city plan. This pattern, pyramids oriented to specific solar and lunar events, is not limited to Egypt and Mexico. The pyramid at Palenque in southern Mexico also orients to the solstices. The Mayan pyramids at Tikal in Guatemala, Kanichkakmu in Mexico, Teotenango, and Caracol all align to either the solstices or specific cross-quarter days, which fall midway between solstices and equinoxes, approximately May 1st and February 2nd. These are not vague or approximate relationships. Each alignment is a precise geometric calculation embedded in the physical construction of the structure. Getting these alignments right requires knowing the exact direction of sunrise or sunset on a specific calendar date. Then, building a structure of a specific height at a specific angle in a specific orientation so that the shadow or light effect lands exactly where intended. It requires astronomy. It requires mathematics. It requires planning that begins before the first stone is placed. Multiple civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries, chose to do this. They chose the same calendar events, solstices, equinoxes, as their reference points. They encoded them with the same level of precision. None of them left a record explaining why. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. What happened inside these structures, however, tells a different story than what was written on the outside. Because the timing of when these civilizations built their pyramids and how closely those dates line up across cultures that had no way of communicating raises a question that the astronomical alignments alone cannot answer. Section 5. The simultaneous emergence. Pyramids built across oceans at the same time. History tends to move in straight lines. One civilization learns something, teaches it to another, that civilization passes it further along, and knowledge spreads across the world gradually over centuries. That is the normal model. Trade routes carry ideas. Conquests spread architecture. Explorers bring back techniques from distant lands. The problem with pyramids is that this model does not hold, because when you map the dates of pyramid construction across the planet, what you find is not a gradual spread from one source outward. What you find is something that has no clean explanation. Egypt's first pyramid, the Step Pyramid at Saqqara, was built for Pharaoh Djoser between approximately 2630 and 2610 BC. It is considered the world's oldest large-scale stone monument. That date is well established and widely agreed upon by Egyptologists. On the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, the city of Caral on the coast of Peru was under active construction around 2600 BC. Caral was the capital of the Norte Chico civilization, one of the oldest complex societies in the Americas. The city contained at least 6 large pyramid mounds, the largest standing roughly 60 feet tall and built from cut stone and compacted fill. The radiocarbon dates for Caral's construction have been established through extensive archaeological work and place the city's major building phase between approximately 2600 and 2000 BC. Egypt and Peru. Separated by the Atlantic Ocean, no ships capable of crossing it in that era have been documented. No shared language, no shared religion, no trade goods have been found connecting them. And yet, both civilizations began building large stone pyramid structures within the same 30-year window at opposite ends of the Earth. This is not a matter of rough dating producing an accidental overlap. The dates are specific. The structures are real. The geographic separation is complete. No archaeologist has produced evidence of contact between Egypt and the Norte Chico civilization of Peru. The simultaneous emergence of pyramid construction on both sides of an ocean remains, as of the current state of knowledge, unexplained. It does not stop there. The Olmec civilization of Mexico, considered the earliest major civilization in Mesoamerica, began building pyramid and mound structures around 1500 BC. The Olmecs built large earthen platforms and ceremonial mounds at sites including San Lorenzo and La Venta. La Venta contains a large pyramid mound, approximately 100 feet tall, built from clay and earth with a fluted surface. The Olmecs are also confirmed to have used mica in their constructions, mica that, as will be examined in a later section, has been traced to a source in Brazil thousands of miles away. The Maya began their own pyramid construction tradition around 300 BC, building stone step pyramids across what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. Their construction continued and expanded for centuries, producing some of the most precise astronomical structures ever built, as already documented. Thousands of miles away in North Africa, the Nubian kingdoms of Sudan were simultaneously building their own pyramids. Nubian construction peaked between approximately 300 BC and 300 AD, meaning that while the Maya were building in the jungles of Central America, a separate African civilization was building steep-sided stone pyramids along the Nile, neither aware of the other, both choosing the same form. In North America, the Mississippian culture began constructing large earthen platform mounds around 800 AD, with their major period of construction running from approximately 900 to 1200 AD. Monk's Mound at Cahokia in present-day Illinois was completed around 1100 AD. It has a base larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was built by a culture that had no connection to Egypt, no connection to the Maya, and no documented knowledge of any other pyramid-building civilization. They built it anyway. In Indonesia, Candi Suka, a stone-step pyramid on the slope of Mount Lawu in central Java, was built in the 15th century AD. It was built by a Javanese Hindu civilization and takes a form strikingly similar to Mesoamerican step pyramids, despite being on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. The visual resemblance between Candi Suka and Maya pyramids has been noted by multiple researchers. No cultural transfer between 15th century Java and pre-Columbian Mesoamerica has been established. In China, pyramid-shaped imperial burial mounds were being constructed from the Qin dynasty onward, beginning around 246 BC. This places Chinese pyramid construction running concurrently with Nubian pyramid construction in Africa and late Maya pyramid construction in the Americas. 3 separate civilizations on 3 separate continents, all building pyramids during the same historical period. The timeline, laid out plainly, looks like this. Mesopotamian ziggurats from 4000 BC, Egyptian pyramids from 2630 BC, Peruvian pyramids from 2600 BC, Olmec mounds from 1500 BC, Nubian pyramids from 800 BC, Maya pyramids from 300 BC, Chinese burial pyramids from 246 BC, North American mound pyramids from 800 AD, Indonesian stone pyramids from the 1400s AD. The construction of pyramid structures spans more than 5,000 years across 6 continents, carried out by civilizations that had, in most cases, no verifiable connection to each other. The mainstream explanation for this pattern points to structural logic. A pyramid shape is stable. Wide at the base, narrowing toward the top, it distributes weight effectively and resists collapse over long periods. Any civilization attempting to build a tall structure without advanced engineering would gravitate toward this form because it works. That explanation is reasonable and is supported by most archaeologists and historians. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. What it does not explain is the precision. Building a structurally stable mound does not require encoding pi and phi into the dimensions. It does not require aligning the structure to the winter solstice sunrise. It does not require sourcing material from thousands of miles away. Structural logic explains the shape. It does not explain what these civilizations chose to put inside the shape, and what technology, centuries after construction, has now found hidden within the walls. Section 6. The Hidden Chambers. What technology is finding inside the pyramids now? The Great Pyramid of Giza has been studied continuously for longer than almost any other structure on Earth. Explorers entered it in antiquity. Arab engineers tunneled into it in the 9th century AD. European scholars mapped it in the 17th century. Modern archaeologists have worked on and around it for over 100 years. For most of that time, the assumption was that what had been found was largely what there was to find. 3 main chambers, a network of corridors, a grand gallery. The structure was considered, if not fully understood, at least fully explored in terms of its interior layout. That assumption turned out to be wrong. In 2015, an international research project called Scan Pyramids was launched jointly by Cairo University and the French HIP Institute, Heritage Innovation Preservation. The project's goal was to scan the Old Kingdom Egyptian pyramids using non-invasive technology, meaning technology that could look inside the structures without drilling, cutting, or disturbing a single stone. The technique they used was muon tomography. Muons are subatomic particles produced when high-energy cosmic rays from space collide with Earth's upper atmosphere. They rain down continuously on everything at ground level. They pass through solid objects, but dense material absorbs more of them than empty space does. By placing detectors inside a structure and measuring how many muons arrive from different directions and at different intensities, scientists can map the difference between solid stone and empty voids, in the same way that an X-ray distinguishes between bone and soft tissue, but at a scale large enough to work on a pyramid. 3 independent scientific institutions participated in the scanning of the Great Pyramid using this technique. Nagoya University in Japan used nuclear emulsion film plates. The High Energy Accelerator Research Organization, also in Japan, used scintillator hodoscopes. The Alternative Energies and Atomic Energy Commission of France used muon telescopes with gas detectors positioned outside the pyramid's north face. These 3 teams worked independently of each other, using different equipment, positioned at different locations, and analyzed their results separately. all three found the same thing. On November 2nd, 2017, the Scanned Pyramids team published their findings in the journal Nature, one of the most respected peer-reviewed scientific publications in the world. They reported the discovery of a large void inside the Great Pyramid, located above the Grand Gallery. The void has a cross-section similar in size to the Grand Gallery itself and a minimum confirmed length of 30 meters. It had been sitting inside the most studied structure in human history, completely unknown to the modern world, until 3 teams of particle physicists found it simultaneously using cosmic ray technology. The lead researcher from Nagoya University, Professor Yukinori Kawai, told National Geographic, "This is definitely the discovery of the century." There have been many hypotheses about the pyramid, but no one even imagined that such a big void is located above the Grand Gallery. Peter der Menwillian of Harvard University described it as an exciting new discovery and a potentially major contribution to knowledge about the Great Pyramid. The void has since been named the Scanned Pyramids Big Void. As of today, nobody has been inside it. Nobody knows what it contains. The Egyptian government has not authorized any drilling or physical entry. This was not the only void the project found. Earlier in 2016, the same scanning project had confirmed a separate, previously unknown cavity on the northeastern edge of the pyramid, located roughly 110 meters up. A second void was identified behind the chevron-shaped structures visible on the pyramid's north face, above the descending corridor. This structure was further investigated through 2017, and its characteristics were refined, but not fully resolved. In 2023, a new paper published in the journal Nature Communications provided the most precise characterization yet of the north face corridor void. The measurements confirmed a corridor-shaped space approximately 9 meters long, 2 meters wide, and 2 meters tall, located just behind the chevron structures on the pyramid's north exterior. The paper was produced by researchers from the Université Paris-Saclay using nuclear emulsion films from Nagoya University and gaseous detectors from the French Atomic Energy Commission. The researchers noted that, to their knowledge, this study represented the first characterization of a void detected by cosmic ray muons with a sensitivity of just a few centimeters. An endoscope, a small camera on a flexible tube, was subsequently inserted through a small joint in the stonework to peer into the corridor. It confirmed the empty space. The corridor has now been physically verified. Its purpose is unknown. To be precise about what the archaeological mainstream says, most archaeologists do not believe these voids have ritual or mysterious significance. The leading practical explanation is that the Egyptians built deliberate gaps and stress-relieving chambers into their pyramids to prevent the enormous weight of the stone above from crushing the internal passages and chambers below. The known relieving chambers above the king's chamber are the established example of this technique. The new voids likely serve a similar structural function in this view. That explanation is reasonable and consistent with what is known about Egyptian engineering. What it does not fully account for is why a void the size of a passenger aircraft fuselage running parallel to and above the Grand Gallery was unknown to everyone who has studied this structure for centuries, and why the most intensively studied monument in human history is still producing first-ever discoveries using technology that did not exist 20 years ago. What the Scanned Pyramids project has demonstrated, beyond any specific finding, is that the interior of the Great Pyramid is not fully known. There are spaces inside it that have not been entered, mapped, or explained. The project continues. Further scanning is planned. What else is in there has not been determined. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The hidden chambers inside the pyramid are extraordinary enough on their own, but they are not the strangest thing technology and archaeology have found in connection with pyramids. Because in the tunnels beneath the pyramids of Mexico and in the burial mounds of ancient China, researchers have found the same highly unusual substance, placed there deliberately, at enormous effort, by two civilizations that had no known connection to each other whatsoever. Section 7. The Mercury Mystery. The same substance found under pyramids in two separate civilizations. In the autumn of 2003, heavy rain hit the ancient ruins of Teotihuacan in central Mexico. The site had been waterlogged before, but this storm was severe enough to saturate the ground around the base of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, the third largest pyramid in the entire Teotihuacan complex. When the water receded, a sinkhole had opened at the foot of the pyramid. It was nearly 3 feet wide and dropped into darkness. Sergio Gomez, an archaeologist working for Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, arrived the following morning, tied a rope around his waist, and had his colleagues lower him in. What he found at the bottom was the entrance to a sealed tunnel. Both directions were blocked by large stones that had not been moved in roughly 1,800 years. What followed was one of the most significant and puzzling archaeological excavations in the history of the Americas. Gomez and his team spent the next several years carefully clearing the tunnel, which ran beneath the pyramid for more than 100 meters. The entrance had been deliberately sealed in antiquity. As they worked through the passage, the finds accumulated: jade statues, the remains of large jaguars and wolves, necklaces made from human teeth, rubber balls, crocodile teeth, carved shells, pyrite objects, thousands of artifacts, many of them apparently placed as ritual offerings, had been deposited in the tunnel before it was sealed. In 2014, the team reached 3 chambers at the end of the tunnel that had remained completely intact for 18 centuries. And then they found the mercury. Large quantities of liquid mercury were pooled in the chambers at the end of the tunnel. Gomez announced the discovery to Reuters. He described it as something that completely surprised the team. Arizona State University archaeologist George Cowgill, one of the leading academic experts on Teotihuacan, confirmed to the Huffington Post that while small traces of mercury had been found at a couple of Maya sites and one Olmec site, this was the first time it had appeared at Teotihuacan, and the first time it had been found in large quantities anywhere in ancient Mexico. Mercury does not exist in liquid form in nature under normal conditions. It occurs naturally in rock as cinnabar, a mercury sulfide ore. To produce liquid mercury from cinnabar, you must crush the ore, heat it to a specific temperature, collect the vapor as it rises, and condense it back into liquid form. This is a multi-step chemical process that is also genuinely dangerous. Mercury vapor is toxic, and prolonged exposure causes severe neurological damage and death. The people who produced this mercury knew what they were working with and went through a difficult and hazardous process to create it, then transported the toxic liquid substance into the depths of a tunnel beneath a pyramid. Gomez proposed that the mercury was placed to represent an underworld river or lake. Reflective surfaces held deep ritual significance in Mesoamerican cultures. Mirrors were regarded as conduits to the supernatural, as windows into other realms. A pool of liquid mercury, which reflects like a mirror, moves like water, and glows silver in torchlight, would have been, in that cultural context, an extraordinarily powerful and expensive ritual object. The walls of the tunnel near the mercury deposits had been coated with powdered pyrite, which is fool's gold, so that they would reflect the light of the mercury pools. The entire space was designed to create the visual effect of being surrounded by a glittering, reflective underworld. That is the established interpretation from the lead archaeologist on the excavation. It is a reasonable explanation grounded in documented Mesoamerican religious practice. What it does not explain is the connection to China. The burial complex of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, is located in Shanxi province and was constructed between 246 and 208 BC. It is most famous for the army of terracotta warriors found in pits around the burial mound. Approximately 8,000 clay soldiers buried to guard the emperor in the afterlife. The mound itself, which takes the form of a stepped earthen pyramid, has never been fully excavated. The Chinese government has not authorized opening the main tomb. What has been done is soil sampling. Extensive soil tests taken from around and beneath the burial mound have found levels of mercury in the soil that are dramatically elevated above any natural baseline for the region. The ancient Chinese historian Sima Qian, who wrote roughly a century after the emperor's death, recorded in his history that the interior of the tomb contained rivers and seas of mercury, mechanically circulated to flow continuously. For a long time, this was treated as poetic exaggeration. The soil samples suggest it is a literal description. Here is what the documented facts show when placed side by side. The burial mound of China's first emperor, constructed around 246 BC in Shanxi province, contains evidence of large quantities of mercury placed deliberately in the structure. The tunnel beneath the pyramid of the feathered serpent at Teotihuacan, Mexico, constructed during the 1st centuries AD, contains confirmed large quantities of liquid mercury placed deliberately in its chambers. Both sites represent mercury used in the context of what is interpreted as an underworld or afterlife space beneath a pyramid. Both required the deliberate production, transport, and placement of a toxic liquid metal at significant effort and risk. The distance between Shanxi province and Teotihuacan is approximately 10,000 kilometers. No trade route connecting Han Dynasty China to pre-Aztec Mexico has been established. No artifact found at either site has been conclusively linked to the other culture. No document from either civilization references the other's existence. The mercury is there at both sites regardless. This is the documented state of knowledge. Two pyramid complexes on opposite sides of the planet, separated by more than 2,000 years of independent cultural development, use the same rare and dangerous liquid metal in the same structural context beneath their most important ceremonial pyramids. The explanation for that parallel has not been found. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. What makes the Teotihuacan complex even harder to account for is not just what was found beneath the pyramid. It is what was found built into the pyramid itself, a material that had no business being there, sourced from a location that had no business supplying it, installed in a way that has no fully satisfying explanation to this day. Section 8. The mica enigma. A material transported thousands of miles for an unknown purpose. In 1906, a worker digging at Teotihuacan made a discovery that nobody could explain at the time, and that nobody has fully explained since. On the 5th level of the Pyramid of the Sun, not at ground level, not in a tunnel beneath it, but built into the upper structure of the pyramid itself, he found a thick layer of mica sheeting covering a large surface area. Mica is a silicate mineral with a flat, layered structure that splits into thin sheets. It is naturally shiny, it is an excellent thermal insulator, it resists heat up to a melting point of over 1,100 degrees Celsius. and in 1906, it was commercially valuable enough that the workers who found it quietly sold most of it before archaeologists could document the full extent of the deposit. What was sold is gone. What remained was enough to raise serious questions. Then, in 1983, during separate excavations at the same site, archaeologists found something even more extensive. A series of interconnected rooms near the Pyramid of the Sun had ceilings constructed in a specific three-layer configuration: stone, then a layer of mica, then stone again. The mica was sandwiched between two layers of stone to a total combined thickness of approximately 6 inches. This was not decorative. Mica is opaque. Once sealed between two layers of stone, it cannot be seen. Whatever its purpose, it was functional, not ornamental. The Viking Foundation, which conducted excavations at Teotihuacan, recovered 2 mica sheets, each measuring 9 square meters from these chambers. These are large pieces. Moving and placing sheets of this size without breaking them — mica splits easily along its layers and is brittle under stress — would have required careful handling over an extended period. The foundation then had the mica analyzed to determine where it came from. Mica is not a rare mineral in a general sense. It exists in many parts of the world. But the specific chemical composition of a mica deposit, its precise combination of trace elements including iron, magnesium, lithium, manganese, and titanium, acts as a geological fingerprint that identifies the region it was extracted from. The analysis of the Teotihuacan mica produced a result that the excavators were not expecting. The nearest geological source of mica with that exact chemical composition is in Brazil. The distance from that Brazilian source region to Teotihuacan is approximately 4,000 kilometers. There were no roads between Brazil and central Mexico in the 1st centuries AD. There was no documented trade network connecting the two regions. No other artifact found at Teotihuacan has been linked to a South American origin. The civilization that built Teotihuacan is itself still unidentified. Archaeologists do not know who these people were, what language they spoke, or where they came from before building one of the largest cities in the ancient world. When the Aztecs arrived at the site centuries after it had been abandoned, they did not know who had built it either. They named it Teotihuacan, meaning the city where men become gods, because it was already ancient and mysterious to them. Into this already unresolved picture, add the following. The mica was not found only at one location within Teotihuacan. It was found on top of the Pyramid of the Sun. It was found in the ceiling structures of connected rooms near the pyramid. It was found beneath flooring in subterranean chambers. And it was found, in separate archaeological work, at Olmec sites predating Teotihuacan, where similar chemical analysis traced it to the same Brazilian source region. 2 separate pre-Columbian civilizations, at different points in history, both sourced mica from the same region of Brazil and incorporated it into their most significant structures. The question of why matters as much as the question of how. Mica's properties are specific and well documented. It is an excellent electrical insulator, so effective that it was used industrially throughout the 20th century in the construction of capacitors and electrical components, and in nuclear and space technologies before synthetic alternatives became available. It is also a thermal conductor, meaning it moves heat efficiently once it absorbs it. It is opaque to fast neutrons. It acts as a moderator in certain nuclear reactions. These are not ancient interpretations of mica's properties. They are modern industrial and scientific classifications. None of this means the builders of Teotihuacan were running electrical systems or nuclear reactors. There is no evidence of that, and claiming it would not be factual. What it does mean is that whoever decided to source mica from 4,000 kilometers away transport it intact across that distance without roads, and then seal it invisibly inside the walls, floors, and upper levels of their most important pyramid, chose a material with a very specific set of functional properties. They could have used local stone. Local stone was available in abundance. The entire city was built from it. They chose not to use local stone for these particular installations. They chose a specific mineral from a distant continent that happens to be one of the most effective natural electrical and thermal insulators on Earth. The archaeologist Annabeth Hedrick, a Mesoamerican cultures specialist at the University of Denver, has documented that reflective materials throughout Teotihuacan held known ritual significance. Mirrors were regarded as ways to look into the supernatural world, as tools for prediction and spiritual contact. Mica's reflective surface fits within that cultural framework. That is the mainstream interpretive position. Ritual and symbolic significance drove the choice of material. What that interpretation leaves unaddressed is the logistics. Moving 9 square meter sheets of brittle mineral over 4,000 kilometers across terrain with no roads, across ocean water with no documented vessels capable of that crossing, and doing it in sufficient quantity to cover ceilings, floors, and exterior pyramid surfaces is not a small undertaking driven purely by symbolic preference. It is an enormous, dangerous, expensive, and logistically complex operation that required knowing the material existed at the source, knowing its specific properties, and deciding those properties were worth the effort. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The Mica question joins the Mercury question, the mathematical question, the astronomical alignment question, and the simultaneous emergence question as one of the documented facts about pyramids that the available explanations do not fully close. But none of these individual facts, striking as they are on their own, prepares you for what happens when you examine how these pyramids were actually constructed, and what remains in the stone itself that modern science cannot reproduce. Section 9. The Construction Paradox. Precision that should not exist. The Great Pyramid of Giza contains approximately 2.3 million stone blocks. The blocks range in weight from around 2 tons to 30 tons each, with some of the granite blocks in the interior chambers estimated at up to 50 tons. The structure was built over a period of roughly 20 years during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, who ruled from approximately 2509 to 2483 BC. Those are the agreed-upon baseline facts. Everything that follows from those facts is where the problems begin. Start with the casing stones. The outer surface of the Great Pyramid was originally covered with approximately 144,000 casing stones made from highly polished white limestone. Each stone weighed around 15 tons. Each stone was cut and finished to an accuracy of 1/100th of an inch across all 6 of its surfaces. To put that in practical terms, 1/100th of an inch is approximately the width of a human hair. These were not small tiles. These were 15-ton blocks of stone, each one finished to hair width tolerances on every face, then fitted together across a structure covering 13 acres of ground. The joints between them were so tight that a piece of paper cannot be inserted between the remaining casing stones still visible at the base of the pyramid today. The stones were set using mortar. That mortar has been chemically analyzed in full. Its composition is known, and it cannot be reproduced. Modern material scientists have identified the chemical compounds present in the mortar, but have been unable to replicate its properties. It is stronger than the limestone blocks it binds. After 4,500 years of exposure to heat, cold, and seismic activity, it is still holding. The formula that produced it has not been found in any document or record from ancient Egypt. The cornerstone foundations of the pyramid were built with ball and socket joints, a construction technique that allows for movement under pressure without cracking or separating. This is the same principle used in modern engineering to allow large structures to handle thermal expansion and seismic stress without fracturing. The builders of the Great Pyramid used it at the base of a stone structure 4,500 years ago. Now look at where the building materials came from. The bulk of the pyramid's limestone blocks were quarried from a site immediately south of the pyramid on the Giza Plateau. That part is relatively straightforward. The interior chambers, however, are lined with granite. Granite does not exist near Giza. The nearest granite source is at Aswan, roughly 500 miles to the south. The granite blocks lining the king's chamber and the relieving chambers above it weigh between 25 and 80 tons each. They were moved 500 miles from their quarry and placed with the same precision applied to the limestone casing stones. Recent archaeological work found evidence of a harbor functioning on the Giza Plateau during the construction period. Sediment cores taken from the area showed signs of a Nile-connected waterway operating alongside the plateau during Khufu's reign, which suggests the primary transport route for heavy stone was water-based rather than over land. This is a significant finding that partially addresses one of the oldest questions about pyramid construction. How do you move millions of tons of stone without the wheel, without steel tools, and without mechanized equipment? The answer appears to involve a harbor and the Nile. How the stones were then lifted and placed with millimeter precision once they arrived is a separate question that has not been answered with the same confidence. What the Egyptians did not leave behind is any written explanation of their methods. No engineering documents have been found. No architectural plans describing how the pyramids were designed or aligned have been recovered from any excavation. The workers who built the Great Pyramid were not slaves, as was believed for centuries. Archaeological evidence found at a workers' village near Giza shows a well-organized workforce that was housed, fed, and given medical care. Skeletal remains from the site show evidence of surgical procedures and bone healing, indicating these workers received treatment for injuries sustained during construction. They were a managed, professional labor force. But what knowledge they carried in their heads about the engineering of what they were building left no written trace. The precision of the construction extends beyond the individual stones. The base of the Great Pyramid covers approximately 13 acres of ground and is level to within 2.1 centimeters across its entire surface. This means the largest base of any pyramid ever built, covering an area larger than 10 football fields, was leveled to within less than an inch of flat across its full extent. The maximum difference in length between the four base sides is 4.4 centimeters, less than 2 inches across sides, each measuring approximately 230 meters. The four corners are very close to perfect right angles, with the largest deviation being 0.05 degrees from 90 degrees. These numbers matter because they are not the results of rough ancient construction. They are results that would be considered acceptable tolerances in precision modern engineering. Getting one measurement this accurate by hand using copper tools and human observation would be difficult. Getting all of them simultaneously across a structure of this scale, built over 2 decades, represents a level of planning and execution that continues to generate serious academic debate about what methods were actually used. The bent pyramid at Dashur, built during the reign of Snefru shortly before the Great Pyramid, shows the Egyptians visibly learning and adjusting mid-construction. The bent pyramid starts at a steep angle and changes slope partway up, producing the bent profile it is named for. This is widely interpreted as the builders realizing the original angle was creating dangerous internal stress and correcting it in real time. The red pyramid, also built by Snefru and completed after the bent pyramid, used the corrected angle throughout and became the first successfully completed smooth-sided pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, built next, achieved the precision already described. The learning curve from the bent pyramid to the Great Pyramid spans roughly 2 decades of construction. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. All of these documented facts about precision, materials, and methods apply to one pyramid in one country. The broader question, which the next section addresses directly, is what happens when you take everything documented across all of the world's pyramids and look at the full picture of what these structures share, what they contain, and what the sum of it points toward. Section 10. The connection nobody can explain. What the patterns actually show. Everything in the previous 9 sections is documented. The pyramid counts, the construction dates, the mathematical constants, the astronomical alignments, the hidden chambers, the mercury deposits, the mica analysis, the mortar that cannot be reproduced. None of it is theory. None of it is fringe interpretation. It is the accumulated, verified, peer-reviewed, and archaeologically confirmed record of what human beings built, what they put inside what they built, and what modern technology has found when it looked closely at structures that were previously considered well understood. The question this final section addresses is simple. When you lay all of it out together, what does it actually show? Start with what the mainstream scientific and archaeological position says, stated accurately and fairly. Archaeologists, historians, and materials scientists broadly agree that the pyramids of the world were built by human societies using the knowledge and tools available to them at the time. The pyramid shape is structurally stable and would naturally appeal to any civilization attempting to build tall, permanent monuments without advanced engineering. The astronomical alignments reflect the fact that ancient peoples observed the sky carefully and used celestial events as calendars, which is documented across every ancient culture on Earth. The mathematical relationships found in pyramid dimensions may reflect practical construction ratios that approximate pi and phi without the builders necessarily knowing those constants by name. These are the positions held by the majority of professional researchers in the relevant fields. That position is not invented. It is grounded in real evidence and serious scholarship. It deserves to be stated clearly rather than dismissed. What it does not do is close the file. The mortar binding the Great Pyramid stones has been fully analyzed and cannot be reproduced. That is not a matter of interpretation. It is a materials science result. The formula is unknown. The fact that it is stronger than the stone it binds and that it has survived 4,500 years intact means the people who made it understood something about materials chemistry that has not been recovered or independently rediscovered in the centuries since. The mica at Teotihuacan came from Brazil. That is a chemical analysis result from the Viking Foundation excavations. The nearest matching geological source for mica with that specific trace element composition is approximately 4,000 kilometers from the construction site. The mica was installed invisibly, sealed between layers of stone where it could not be seen, in quantities large enough to cover significant surface areas across multiple structures. The civilization that installed it has never been identified by name. The Aztecs, who arrived at the site centuries after it was abandoned, did not know who built it. Mercury was found in large quantities beneath the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent at Teotihuacan, confirmed by Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History and reported in peer-reviewed literature. Soil samples from beneath the burial mound of China's first emperor in Shaanxi province contain dramatically elevated mercury levels consistent with the ancient historical account of mercury rivers inside the sealed tomb. The two sites are 10,000 kilometers apart. No connection between Han Dynasty China and pre-Aztec Mexico has been archaeologically established. A void with a minimum length of 30 meters and a cross-section similar to the Grand Gallery was confirmed inside the Great Pyramid in 2017 by 3 independent scientific teams using 3 separate technologies, published in Nature. It has not been entered. Its purpose is unknown. This discovery came after centuries of continuous study of the most examined structure in human history. Egypt and Peru both began building large stone pyramid complexes within approximately the same 30-year window, around 2600 BC, separated by an ocean with no documented crossing capability in that era, and no archaeological evidence of contact between the two cultures. The base of the Great Pyramid is level to within 2.1 centimeters across 13 acres of ground. Its cardinal alignment is accurate to 1/15 of 1 degree. Its dimensions encode the value of pi to within 0.04% and reflect the golden ratio to 3 decimal places. The Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza has exactly 365 steps. The Pyramid of the Moon at Teotihuacan aligns to the summer solstice sunrise and winter solstice sunset, verified by researchers from the National School of Anthropology and History. The Great Pyramid's internal shafts point to specific stars as they appeared in approximately 2450 BC. Each of these facts has an individual explanation that mainstream scholarship offers. The mortar formula may have used locally available materials whose exact combination has not been identified yet. The mica may have been obtained through a trade network whose routes have not been found. The mercury reflects Mesoamerican ritual practices around reflective surfaces. The astronomical alignments reflect careful, naked-eye observation by skilled ancient astronomers. The mathematical constants in the dimensions may be coincidental products of practical construction ratios. The simultaneous emergence of pyramid building may reflect the independent, parallel development of stable monumental architecture by cultures that reached similar technological stages at similar points in history. Every one of those explanations is possible. None of them has been proven, and the accumulation of them, required to account for every documented fact simultaneously, begins at some point to strain the word coincidence beyond its normal load-bearing capacity. What no researcher of any position disputes is this: multiple civilizations across thousands of years in every inhabited continent chose to build the same shape as their most permanent and significant structures. They chose locations with documented geographic and astronomical precision. They encoded mathematical relationships that were not formally named until centuries after the structures were built. They sourced materials from distances that should have been prohibitive. They placed the same rare substance beneath pyramids on opposite sides of the planet. They left buildings that are still revealing new internal structures to 21st century particle physics. The honest position, the one supported by the full weight of documented evidence without overreach in either direction, is this: the connection between the world's pyramids is real. It is measurable. It runs deeper than shared architectural preference, and the explanation for how that connection came to exist, whether through parallel human genius, through lost knowledge, through contact that left no surviving record, or through something else entirely, has not been found. The pyramids are still standing. The answers are not yet in. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.